good Thursday afternoon. I come up here to the park. I'm thinking I'd be up here where there's get some sunshine, but it's so windy up here, so hopefully I can get this done without everything blowing everywhere. It's blowing my hair everywhere, but that's okay. Anyway, I wanted to, I wasn't able to do a video last week. We buried my stepson last Thursday, and I thought I was doing okay till we got to the gravesite, but anyway, and he's buried in the military cemetery on Holtzclaw. And anyway, I just, something like that just kind of wipes you out emotionally, and it's just hard to kind of pull yourself together or it was hard for me to pull myself together last week, so I didn't get to make a video. So anyway, I thought I would share something with you this week, and something that I saw a few days ago that I had never, something I've heard for many years, but never was able to tie the two together. Anyway, I heard something about this was talking about the Ark of the Covenant, and the Bible speaks about the Ark of the Covenant back in, I believe it was in Exodus when they first made that. Let's see here, I can tell you when he told them how to make it. Anyway, I believe it was in Exodus. I'd have to look that one up exactly when God told them to make that. It's when he was telling them how to make the temple and the size and what all to do with it, and so it was all in that. So the Ark of the Covenant was and covenant is like a promise or but anyway, it was pertaining to that. And in the Ark, it says, this is Hebrews chapter, I believe it's chapter 9, verse 4, says, let's see, it said, after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, that's verse 3, which had the golden censer and the Ark of the Covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant. Which means, let's see, the golden pot that had the manna in it. That one was back in Exodus. I did look that one up. Exodus chapter 16. It's where he sent, this is after they had left Egypt and they were in the wilderness. And it's on the heading of Exodus chapter 16. It's called the Wilderness of Sin. So if you remember, if you read through that, that's where they complained. After all the miracles that they've seen, they complained about everything. Isn't that just like us today? But anyway, they complained because there was no water. So he sent them water. And then they complained because they had to, they needed something to eat, which we do. And God knows what we need. But, instead of them coming to God, and that's just like us, but instead of them coming to God and saying, we need food, we need water, we need food, they started complaining to Moses and said, would that we had, at least when we was back in Egypt, we had all that we needed. They were being tortured, and it's a picture of sin. They would rather go back to their life of sin, and their life of bondage, which sin is a picture of bondage. They would rather go back to that where they think that they had all their needs met than to go forward and trust God. So what they didn't want to do was trust God. So that's where he sent them the quails and the manna. Manna was, I think it said it was like a little wafer of some sort, and but they would rather go back into their life of bondage than to trust God for their provisions. But anyway, what this man said, and like I said, I've never understood it like this before, but it said that the Ark of the Covenant, which was overlaid with gold, that's where in the Holy of Holies, that's where that's where God met with them. Remember, the priest could go only once a year behind the veil, and the Spirit of the Lord, or they had to sacrifice the blood offering on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. But inside of that, it had the tablets, which is the Ten Commandments, written by God's own hand in Exodus. In Exodus, hold on a second, my notes flew off. Okay, sorry. I'm meeting with all kind of obstacles today, so it shows you that Satan's not going to like this. But anyway, the Bible, it speaks of the Ten Commandments in Exodus and Deuteronomy, but it talks about those. But if you remember the story where when Moses met on Mount Sinai with God in the burning bush, it says God wrote the Ten Commandments with His own hand. When Moses came off the mountain, he got angry at the Israelites because they were, while he was on the mountain, and I think it said he was up there with God 40 days, which 40 is a time of, I believe it's testing. But anyway, he come down off the mountain after 40 days and with the Ten Commandments, and he saw them that they'd made a golden calf. They were drinking and dancing, just everything that God had told them not to do. And anyway, he got angry and he threw those through the I believe it said he threw them down. Anyway, he broke them. And so he went back up to the mountain, and God made another set. It said with His own, he wrote them with His own hand. But anyway, that was in the ark. Then the manna, which is God's provision, and then that's what He provided for them to eat. And then Aaron's rod that budded is a story I believe it was in Numbers. Anyway, it was talking about they was rejecting His idea of Aaron, of the Levites, and I've looked it up, and Aaron and Moses was of the tribe of Levi. The Levites were the priest, and all of them were the priest of the day of that time. And I guess anyway, they were the priestly. They did the priestly duties. So anyway, the story goes that God says for each tribe to take them a stick and carve their name in it, and then the one that budded, it would be the one that they were to put in the line of the priestly line. But anyway, they would be the ones that would take care of the temple. They were the ones that would make the sacrifices. And I was going to try to look that one up just so it wouldn't be confusing to you. But anyway, they were of the priestly line. So Aaron's rod, his stick had his name on it, and it budded, meaning it produced leaves. It showed life, produced leaves, and I think it said it produced almonds. But anyway, that showed them that's who God chose to be that priestly line. But in all three of them, they were all three rejected by humanity. They rejected God's laws in the Ten Commandments and did their own thing. They complained and then rejected when He provided them with manna. They complained about that and rejected it. And then they rejected the rod of God's decision to for him to let the priestly line come through there. Let's see. That's Numbers chapter 17. It's talking about Aaron's rod. It said, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and take of every one of them a rod according to the house of their fathers, of all their princes according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods. Write thou every man's name upon the rod, and thou shalt write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi, for one rod shall be for the head of the house of their fathers, and thou shalt lay them in the tabernacle of the congregation before the testimony, where I will meet with you. And it shall come to pass that the man's rod whom I shall choose shall blossom, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel, whereby they murmur against you." And Moses spake unto the children of Israel, and every one of their princes gave him a rod apiece, for each prince one according to their fathers' houses, even 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses laid up the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of the witness. And it came to pass that on the morrow Moses went into the tabernacle of witnesses, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded, and brought forth buds, and bloomed blossoms, and yielded almonds. And Moses brought out all the rods from before the Lord unto the children of Israel, and they looked, and took every man his rod. And the Lord said unto Moses, Bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the rebels, and thou shalt take away their murmurings from me, that they die not. Anyway, he put those were the three things that were in the Ark of the Covenant, and all three were rejected by the people. They're murmuring and complaining, but anyway, they were put in there so that once a year, every year, they would go. The priest would go into the Holy of Holies, and they would make a sacrifice first for their own sins, and then they would sacrifice and sprinkle blood on the mercy seat for the sins of the people. They did that every year, and the people knew what was in that ark. They went through all that and knew everything that was in there. They knew what it was for, and they knew what it was. It was because of their murmuring and their complaining, and they knew that it was because of their rejection of all that God had provided for them. So they made those sacrifices, and it was for the sins of the people, the sins of all mankind. At least that's what they knew at the time. Anyway, let's see, Exodus. Let me look up Exodus 16. There was something I wanted to tell you about that. Let's see here. Exodus 16, 32 and 33. Oh, this is talking about the manna. And 16:32. Chapter 16, verse 32 and 33. And Moses said, This is the thing which the Lord commanded. Fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot, put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it before the Lord to be kept for your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. That's another one that talks about, the manna that they rejected or that they complained about. He took that and put it in a jar, a golden jar, and put it in the ark. But anyway, it says, so like I said, all three were rejected by humanity. And you know what? We're just like that. God provides for us. All He's asked us to do is to try to trust Him, and He has provided everything that we need. But yet we still complain. It's not good enough. It's not what I want. And just because we're Christians, just because I'm a believer in God does not mean that I don't complain, because I do. When things are not going my way, I do. That's the sin nature. And 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 I have to admit that when things are bad, and I know I've mentioned here recently that just discouraging times, and just things that's just the way of the world right now. It's just all of us complain, but you know what? He's laid it all out in His Word, what we're to expect. I mean, He's told us. We've read the book. We know what's going to happen, and yet we still complain because we want things to be safe for us. We want things to be better. We want our needs met, but we want to do it our own way. And but anyway, if you compare that to the cross, which is what all this, all of that was a picture of what Jesus was going to have to do on the cross. Every bit of it. The mercy seat, sprinkling of the blood, it's all leading up to Him, because what He did on that cross was final. There doesn't need to be any more sacrifices. That was the final sacrifice. The sacrifice actually started in Genesis chapter 3 when Adam and Eve sinned, and then to cover up their sin. It's to cover up their nakedness, but basically to cover up their rebellion. That's all sin is just rebellion against a holy God. Is they made them fig leaves, I think it said, and covered their nakedness up. But basically they tried to cover up their sin. Isn't that just like us as well? That when we sin and we think that we may hide it from humanity, we may hide it from each other, but God knows. He knows. You can't hide anything from Him. But the first sacrifice was made when He had to sacrifice an animal to give them coats of skin. And so, I mean, how can you take the fur off of an animal without killing it? I think I mentioned this in one other video. So there was the first blood sacrifice to give them a covering for their own sin. But again, that's just like us today. But and also in Genesis 22:13, let me look at that one. And it all ties in together. If you take God's word and you study it out, it all ties in together. 22:13, and this is talking about in comparison to Jesus' death on the cross. This is a story where Abraham, God promised him a son. He did provide that son in Abraham's old age, but then God asked him to sacrifice, or to offer Isaac for a sacrifice, and so he trusted God. So he did go to. It says he went to. Let me just read here. Genesis chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt or test Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here am I. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him up there a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell thee. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again unto you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. But how, just like that story is the Son of God. That was God's only son. That Isaac was Abraham's only son. And so that ram was caught in a thicket, which I looked it up, and it could be, vines, or it could be even thorns. Well, then you go back to the cross. Remember, Abraham laid the wood on Isaac's back. Jesus carried the cross on his back. The innocent ram was caught in thorns. Caught he was made to be the sacrifice. He got his horns caught in the thicket and the thorns. Jesus had a crown of thorns. And so in comparison, but anyway, back to the story of the Ark of the Covenant, Jesus became the blood that was put on that mercy seat, was him. Jesus became that blood. Jesus shed his blood, just like the sacrifices were. The blood of the sacrifice was sprinkled on that mercy seat. Jesus' blood was shed on that cross, and it's because of our rejection. In that day, the Israelites rejected all that God had provided for them and complained about it. We rejected Jesus and complained about what things that under the what we think is bondage. I guess it would be under the bondage of having to surrender our life to him. But we look at what he's done for us. It's the same story, just in a little different format. Jesus was rejected and hated by his family, by his peers, definitely by the priests and the Pharisees. He was hated because they knew the story. Let me go back and I'll tell you this. In comparison to the crown of thorns, Abraham, well, I already told you all that. Let's see, the priests and the Pharisees knew the Old Testament. They knew it through and through. They knew everything about it. And they knew that one day that a Messiah would come and that he would be sent. They heard it all through the Old Testament that God was going to send a Redeemer, but it speaks in I believe it is, let's see, John 11:47. Let me turn to that and I'll read you that one, just so I'm not trusting myself. I feel like I'm out of sorts today, and I know that I'm trying to get back to this, and I'm not as together as I would like to be. Let's just put it that way. The priests and the Pharisees knew the Old Testament through and through. They'd done the yearly sacrifices for hundreds of years, and they knew that about the Messiah long before Jesus was born. But just like humanity today, they chose to be in control, be their own God, same as Satan. If you remember the story about Satan and how he was cast from heaven to earth because he wanted to be like God, he wanted to be worshipped, he wanted the power. We, the priests and the Pharisees, and Satan, and even us, we want our power, we want our pride, and we want to have our own way. John 11:47 and 48 says, let's see. This is when the Pharisees in Jesus' time then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, "What do we? For this man doeth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and our nation." So you know what? They weren't worried about, wasn't concerned about the things that the miracles that Jesus was doing. They wasn't even concerned that he was there to even pay for their sin debt. What they were concerned about is that it was going to take away their position, their power, their position. And, you know, that's just like us. We don't want to surrender, because that's what it is recognizing that you are those same Israelites that rejected everything that God has done for you. And I'm speaking to myself just as well. That we rejected all that. And Jesus took upon himself, became that sacrifice to pay for our sin debt. Remember, the Bible says that for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. So, you know, he took on all of that because there was no other way to be reconciled to God. He became our sin for us, and he paid it all. And all we've got to do is accept that, and we've got to surrender and let him be Lord of our life, because he knows better how to help us than we do. You know, every time I try to do things on my own, I make a big mess of it. And the only way that I can ever do right is by surrendering to him and saying, Lord, I don't know where we're going. I don't know where you're taking me. But I know if wherever that is, it's better for me than what I have planned, because I've made a terrible mess most of my life. Actually, all of my life, when I was old enough to make decisions. And all through my life, if I tried to do it my own way, it never turned out. And it's never going to turn out, because what we're trying to do is work independently from God. And we can't. Adam and Eve couldn't do it, and neither can we. You cannot live this life and glorify God when you are trying to do it on your own. But anyway, I'm just thankful that he has put up with me for this long. I would have given up on me a long time ago, but he doesn't. He's never going to give up on us. You know, he's got a plan, and his purpose is better than anything that we could come up with. And one of my favorite verses is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans that I have for you, saith the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, and give you an expected end, or hope in a future. And you know, his way is always best. And when we decide to live independently from them, all you got to do is look at your own life. When you decide to live independently from them, where are you at in your life? Where are you? How's that working out for you? For me, it's not working out good at all. And that doesn't mean that he's going to free us from all the troubles, because remember, sin reigns in this world, and as long as we have our flesh, we're not going to be free from that, because that's just how life is. We have the God of this world. You remember the Bible says the world, the flesh, and the devil is God's enemy. The pride of the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, I believe it is. I believe that's in 1 John. It's our own wickedness. Even though we're children of God, even those of us that are saved, we still have the flesh to deal with. And the flesh is God's enemy. So anytime you listen to your flesh, you're going against God. Even if you think you think I'm doing good, I'm witnessing, I'm going to church, I'm singing in the choir, I'm paying the tithes, I'm doing all this, for God. God doesn't need us. He doesn't need us to do things for him. He just needs us to surrender to him and let him do it. Let him use us where he wants to use us. We cannot determine our own destiny. We've got to give it all to him, and because he says our righteousness is as filthy rags. It's not talking about just rags you wipe up mud, wipe the dirt off. It's talking about you think of rags as in cleaning up an infection, blood and stuff like that. It's that kind of filth. And as long as we try to do it in our own self, as long as we try to please our flesh, we're never going to please God. But anyway, I hope this helped you. I know it was kind of confusing. Like I said, I didn't feel like I had it all together today, but I know that scene about the Ark of the Covenant and how that played out, and how it related to the cross really helped me to understand it, But you know what? God knows. He knows all about us. He knows where our heart is. It says, it says man looks, I believe I read this maybe a couple of videos ago, man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. He knows where your heart is. He knows that you try to do what you can to please him, but he also knows that we're flesh and that we're going to fail. And he loves us anyway. When he died on that cross, when Jesus died on that cross, he paid our sin debt complete and full. And yet he still knows that we're going to mess up. Just because we're saved doesn't mean that we're free from sin. We just have to trust him with what life throws at us. Anyway, I hope that you have a good day. I hope that that you have many things to thank the Lord for today. And I pray that you just trust him with even life that doesn't make sense. I love you. Thanks.